Good morning and welcome to Living by Faith with Trillia Newbell, your bright spot on your Saturday morning. I'm your host, Trillia, and I'm really looking forward to today. It's February. Can you believe it? Just when you think January will never end, February sneaks right in and takes over. I don't know about you, but it feels like, wow, we're here. We're here. It's time. This year is just going to fly by once January's over. I love February. It's a short little month. Where I'm from, it's usually the beginning of spring. It means spring is going to poke its little head in for a few weeks, and it's already started. And then it will get cold again. And then spring will stay for good. It is wonderful. I love the beginning of February because I know what is coming. I also love February because it's Black History Month. If you are familiar with my work, you will know that I have a desire to provide a refreshing narrative to our conversations around race and ethnicity. In short, I desire for us to do more delighting, celebrating, and enjoying our differences. We don't need to ignore them. Instead, we can embrace them and enjoy them. One way that I've personally embraced celebration is through my family's intentional approach to observing Black History Month. Although we observe Black History Month during February, these exercises that I'm going to share with you in just a minute have spilled out into other months and with various cultures and people groups. We've done this with others in Australia, Africa, and Asia. Every February, I post about our family's journey of learning and celebrating. And each year, people ask to join in. It happens every single year that I post. I'll post a picture and what we're learning about. And I get inquiries. How can I be a part of this? So you know what I did? I wrote a book. I wrote a book called Celebrating Around the Table. And it is my invitation to you to join us, join my family as we learn and enjoy celebrating in February. So here's some things I wrote in the introduction of my book, Celebrating Around the Table. Let's consider why we should learn about Black history, because I think that's important to kind of get that understanding first. Getting to know our shared past throughout the year can help us gain understanding and perspective. Specifically in the church, it can be a means of building community and helping us learn to bear one another's burdens, as Galatians 6:2 shares. Bearing the burden of another is a way of loving our neighbor as ourselves. Our nation's history of oppression and segregation, it continues to carry a sting for many, both white and Black. Understanding the gravity of all that has happened can only help us in relating to the pain so many of us still carry. A knowledge and understanding of others' history can be a catalyst for open dialogue. Of course, we wouldn't want to assume that knowledge equates to full understanding, but it can help. Furthermore, and possibly most importantly, this knowledge can inspire a genuine interest in others when done as unto the Lord. This will lead to opportunities to share the gospel and mutual fellowship. I've seen it time and time and time again around my table and in my communities where we've shared openly and learned about history. So, what is the founding of Black history? In 1976, the United States government officially designated February as Black History Month, an annual month-long celebration of noted Black historians, scholars, educators, publishers, and others here in America. For me, school days during the month of February meant learning about historical Black figures like Frederick Douglass, Rosa Parks, and Martin Luther King Jr. The posters would go up and we'd be required to dive in and do some heavy research on those people, just the few, right, that we learned about. But as quickly as the posters went up, they disappeared when the calendar turned over to March 1st. As earnest as our research had been, once February ended, the people were basically forgotten. February is a wonderful time to reflect on the lives of Black Christians and Black Americans and the contributions they had on society. It's a time to teach kids about a key aspect of American history. One motto I repeat a lot is either we will teach our children or the culture will. Parents ask me frequently, where do I begin? Where do I begin? Celebrating Around the Table, my book, provides a place to start as we explore our shared history. Open the door for questions from your children, consider how to think from a biblical worldview, and celebrate our differences. My hope in providing you with this resource is to give you a place to start. But I also hope that you'll pull out this book or any resource really in July or in October. It doesn't have to be relegated to February. But what a sweet time that we have. So as you get a small taste of the stories featured in the book, I hope you'll want to do some more digging for yourself. You don't have to wait until February to learn about the lives of Black people in our culture. You can do it all year long. And resources like mine it's there to help provide you with a start and a place to go, and I pray encourage you in your faith along the way, because there's lots of devotionals and other faith aspects. And today, to help me walk through some of those aspects of the book that you might enjoy, I've asked my producer Karen Hendren to join me. Karen Hendren is the producer of Living by Faith and Ed Stetzer Live. Karen has worked at Moody Radio since 2014 on a variety of programs. She is also an Emmy-winning journalist whose worked at the Associated Press, Reuters, CNN, Fox, and News Nation. She has a Master's of Science in Journalism from Northwestern University. She's undertaking a Master's in Biblical Studies from a program at Moody Theological Seminary. Karen has 2 sons and lives in the Chicago suburbs. Karen, welcome to my show.
Thank you. Brilliant.
Our show.
Yes.
Our show.
Yes.
You know, it's so fun. I was thinking before I started even talking, I'm so thankful for you, Karen, and Merle St. James, my engineer, and anyone who's on the phone lines, whether it's Anthony or Titus or whoever. I mean, it really does take, this is so cliche, but it takes a village to run a show. And so I'm so grateful. I know we're going to say thanks later in the show, but I wanted to say thanks right now because it is, yes, it's a blessing. I just wouldn't be able to do this show without you and talk about things like Celebrating Around the Table. So I'm really grateful to have you on.
Well, thank you. And you know, it's a blessing for me to work here, to work on the shows that I work on. You know, sometimes I've worked at a number of places, and Moody's just very special. It's very special. The people that I work with, the kind of things, being able to incorporate faith into the work that you do in such an integral way is really. I just feel like it's been a gift that God gave me. So. Thank you.
Oh, yes. What a gift. Yes. Thank you, Moody Bible Institute. So we are going to talk a little bit about Black History Month and the book. And so I wondered if you, first of all, do you have a copy? I need to get you a copy.
Well, I've looked through the book. It is absolutely beautiful. I love all the pictures. And I'm a bit of a foodie myself. So I just love the recipes. So yeah,
that's so great. That's so great.
It's great.
That's so great.
I'm curious. We've talked about this, like what you do for Black History Month, and I'm just curious: is there a specific country that you're focusing on this month, or like how do you pick that for your family?
Oh, I love that question. Well, this month we're actually going to walk through Celebrating Around the Table, my book, and so it's going to be a little unique in that we're going to focus on just the people in that book, which are Christians. But every month, every year, excuse me, is a little different. So I don't change countries in
Hmm.
February. Typically, it's throughout the year. I might look at other countries, but in February, I typically focus on African Americans, or last year I did go into Africa to try to find my roots. So I looked at my ancestry from, I did a DNA test because so much of our records were destroyed or not, weren't even recorded.
Right.
So my history doesn't go very far. So I did a DNA test to see, okay, well, where are my roots? And learned some exciting things and looked at, Nigeria and parts of West Africa as well, and we dove into some of the culture and people there because it's our history, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But this year, and what is typical is I look at a person in our American history, and then we will learn about what they did, who they were, and then we will cook through something and just talk around the table. And it has been one of the real delightful aspects of and new traditions of our family.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Is there one person that you're focusing on this year, or are you focusing on a few?
I love that question. We are focusing on a few. So in the book, I wrote about 12 people, but instead of doing 3 per week this year, I decided because I want to share also with social media and my readers a lot more, we are going to focus on 3 or well, maybe about 2 people a week.
Hmm.
And so I'm looking forward to diving in and really engaging my family on these people with the various people. So when we return, we'll dive into who those people are more when we return. Welcome back to Living by Faith with Trillia Newbell. I am your host, Trillia, and I have the absolute pleasure of having my producer, Karen Hendren, join me today. And I would love it if you would join me too. How can you do that? You can call in if you have any comments or questions that you'd like to share. Give us a call. We'd love to hear from you. Call us at 877-548-3675 or 877-LIVE-675. I know a lot of you like to also email. You can send me an email, livingbyfaith@moody.edu, or call 877-548-3675. Karen, it is a real joy to have you and to be talking about Celebrating Around the Table.
Yeah. Well, it's a joy to be here. Before the break, we were talking about how you were going to celebrate Black History Month this month with your family, and how you kind of incorporate that sort of not just for February but all year, but how you were going to use your book and some of the people that you have featured in your book to kind of deep dive with your family. So tell me a little bit about that. What's your plan for the month?
Yeah. So I am going to focus on Elizabeth Freeman, Phyllis Wheatley, Ruby Bridges, and I believe Betsy Stockton. Now, because I have written about 12 people, it may change, or I may decide, let's just do all 3 and 3 people each week instead of just one. But I am really excited about focusing in on these individuals. And if I could just briefly, I'll tell our audience a little bit about each. Elizabeth Freeman, she was known as the first African American woman to win her freedom in 1781 in a court in the United States. She was born into slavery and given the name Mumbet, also known as Mumbet. She was inspired, and this is what is remarkable to me, to fight for her freedom by hearing a reading of the Declaration of Independence. So, in the Declaration, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. So she took that and was like, wait a minute, that means I'm created equal. And it's really, really amazing. But one of the quotes that I've read this before, I believe even on our show, but she says, anytime, while I was a slave, if 1 minute's freedom had been offered to me and I had been told I must die at the end of that minute, I would have taken it. So that's how much freedom meant to her and so many of those who were enslaved in our country. And so I wanted to focus on Elizabeth Freeman because of the remarkable nature of her faith and that she fought for her own freedom.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Well, yeah, that's great. And it's so great to learn these stories. I love the thing that when you were talking in the first segment, you were talking about like what Black History Month meant to you when you were a kid, kind of learning about these historical figures. And I suppose that has probably brought, has shaped this curiosity and was sort of the early seeds of this book,
Yeah.
But you know what? As I was listening to that, I have to share this like little tiny story because you were talking about how you were inspired as a kid, and it's so funny. My son, when he was in first grade, it must have been Black History Month. He learned about Rosa Parks, and I was pregnant at the time, and so we were talking about names, names, boy names, and he said, "Mom, if you have a girl, we should name her Rosa Parks." And I just thought that was so cute.
That is so cute.
Yeah, but it's great that like we take this time to focus on these people that really are heroes and have like shaped history, this country. So I love that. So tell me a little bit more about some of the others that you're going to be focusing on.
Yeah. Well, I want to actually start by saying that I didn't focus on a lot of the people that we often hear about, such as the wonderful Rosa Parks, because so many of us don't know about people like Elizabeth Freeman.
Yeah.
And so I took a breath and coughed there. So I wanted to really focus in on some people that we would never hear about who were strong in their faith. Maybe they were a missionary or they just proclaimed their faith. But we would never hear about them. So Elizabeth Freeman is one of them. And one of the aspects of the book is also that I dive into a devotional aspect about their story. So for Elizabeth Freeman, I mentioned that she listened to the Declaration of Independence and heard that, oh, wait, we're created equal. Well, then I include a devotional in the book on Genesis 1 and that we are made in the image of God so that we can root all of these things in the scriptures and in the Lord. And so that is I just wanted to note that. But another person that I am really excited to feature, which of course we do know about her, is Ruby Bridges.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we might forget Ruby Bridges is actually still living, and she was born in September 8th, 1954, in the segregated and deeply racist state of Mississippi at that time. And she spent her kindergarten year in a segregated school in New Orleans. At 6 years old. Now imagine your 6-year-old child or your 6-year-old neighbor or your youth group kid or your Sunday school lesson if you don't have children. Imagine your 6-year-old, okay? At 6 years old, she became the first African American to integrate schools in the recently desegregated South.
Wow.
There are pictures in her own autobiography and anywhere, if you just search, of her walking into the school surrounded by adults yelling at her.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
No.
No,
How
no.
how terrifying that must be, or must have been.
Oh, yes. But what was remarkable about her story and what she wrote in her own words is she leaned on God, the example of her mother, in prayer. So here's a quote from her. She wrote, "Kneeling at the side of the bed and talking to the Lord made everything okay.
Wow.
My mother and our pastor always said, you have to pray for your enemies and people who do you wrong. And that's what I did."
Wow, that's powerful, and especially out of like a 6-year-old.
Yes. So she had and she watched her mom, and her mom encouraged her to pray, her pastor encouraged her to pray, and so she prayed. And they prayed with her, and it's what's carried her through these years is the power of prayer. And so I find her story and the way that her courage at such a young age amazing and remarkable. And she her teacher, and the only teacher I believe that would care for her and her, still remain close today, which I think is just beautiful. Or they did. She may have passed, but
Right.
they'd still remain in her adult years. And I just think what a powerful example also of that woman who stood up against a tide of anger and racism and
condemnation.
yeah. So it's amazing.
Yeah, that is an amazing story.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
gives you a lot of hope too, you know.
It does.
Gives
It
you
gives you a
hope.
lot of hope.
Yeah. And in prayer, and then in just encouragement in what it is to be an example as a parent, as a teacher, as someone in the community, as a neighbor, as a friend, you know, that you actually can make a difference by being a good example.
Yes. And it's convicting, isn't it? It
Yeah.
makes me want to make sure that I am on my knees. And you know, I had that same example with my mother. Every night she kneels like on her knees and prays beside her bed. And she did it for years. And I want to be that same example. And clearly Bridget's mom was that example to her, but I don't think any of these people who I focus on could have been so courageous and remarkable without just the strength of the Lord. And so many of them leaned on God to get them through. And Ruby Bridges is one of those examples of this young girl who leaned on God to get her through. And I do hope for our listeners of Living by Faith that you can also be encouraged about the power you have to influence and teach your children. And at the top of the hour, I was saying that we can either teach our children or the culture can. And her mom took that moment to help her lean and run to the Lord. And we can do the same. We can ask our kids or ask the Lord to give us strength and wisdom to teach them to run to Him, run to the Lord in prayer. He is listening. He is with us. He can carry it. And little Ruby needed to know that. And so we all need to know that. And right now, in our current cultural moment where there's so much still division and strife and confusion, we need to know that. We need to know that we can run to God and He is with us. And the scriptures say that He will never leave nor forsake us. And He did not leave little Ruby Bridges, who's now an adult. He never left her, and He would never forsake her. And I'm so grateful for that. We will continue to dive into these stories of bravery and the truth of God and His wisdom when we return. Welcome back to Living by Faith with Trillia Newbell. I am so excited to be talking about my new book, Celebrating Around the Table. And it is a book that features 12 people from history that celebrates Black Christians and our history and your history. And it includes devotionals, all sorts of things to help you as you think through Black history for February or beyond. And we'd love to hear from you. Do you have any questions? Maybe you have a question about how to teach your children. I think that is one of the most common questions I get. Give me a call. I'd love to talk to you. Call us at 877-548-3675 or 877-LIVE-675. I also receive emails livingbyfaith@moody.edu. Karen, we've been talking, and it has been a real delight to talk about these stories. And the stories, I know the book is called Celebrating Around the Table, but some of these stories really lend themselves to lament. So we are, as we're reading and listening, we can't help but also lament. And so I just wanted to note that as well. But what stood out to you as you look through the book?
Well, I love the devotional aspect of it. It also struck me that you feature 12 people. So if you wanted to break this up, you could do a different person each month and kind of do it all year.
That's actually a great idea.
but I love food. I love really good food, and I love cooking, and so that is kind of fun to me about this too. So I got to ask, what's your favorite recipe? Where did you come up with these recipes?
Oh, that's a good question.
What's this month? What's the first recipe out of the book that you're going to make this month?
I love these questions. Okay, I'll start with where did they come from? They came from a lot of my upbringing, so they're not actually recipes that I would cook every single day because a lot of them are very Southern and very not great for you. I mean, not all of them, but some of them. And so I just really loved cooking growing up, and my mother introduced us to all sorts of Southern cooking. And so a lot of them are inspired by my mother. And then I thought I wanted to think about maybe what someone from that time would eat. And I tried to kind of pair the recipes based on that.
Oh, I love that.
It may not match perfectly, but I tried my best. And another thing about these recipes that are unique to this book is that they are very simple, except for maybe a couple of them, because the shrimp and grits are probably more complicated, and the mac and cheese is a little bougie. But overall, because I love different cheeses, anyways, overall it's pretty simple, and So it's not necessarily how I actually cook every single day, but it is what I wanted to do is make something accessible and easy for every home cook and home chef. So My favorite recipe probably is the shrimp are the shrimp and grits. I really love shrimp and grits,
So do
and
I.
yeah, they're so good. And these were really delicious to make up and develop. And oh, speaking of, I had to develop the recipes, which was very difficult, but I did it, and the Lord was with me. but um, but yeah, so shrimp and grits are one of my favorites. I also included greens, black eyed peas, and cornbread with
Mm.
homemade butter because every New Year's Eve, that's what we eat, and I couldn't not include it, even though we're you might make that recipe in July, but it is just it's a staple. It's what we do in my home and
Is
what I
is
did
that very
growing up.
Southern
It's
too?
so Southern.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, yeah. It's a tradition in New Year's Day. Every a lot of households eat greens, black eyed peas, and and we did it this year. And it honestly, I think it has some kind of weird superstition to it, but for
Uh-huh.
us, it's just a fun tradition. And so I included those because I just had to. It was just going to be too sad if I didn't. For this coming up week, I am going to make a simple beef stew, and as we learn about people who were enslaved, and you know, there were a lot of people who would take potatoes and simple meats and cook them. So I'm going to do a beef stew with cornbread and homemade butter. Um, and I might, because that's a recipe for this week. Now,
Okay, so what
you can.
time is dinner and when
I
can
know.
I come? So
We eat very early. We're like a 5 p.m. eaters, and you can come anytime. But that yeah, so I'm probably going to do that, and I may also do this one dish chicken and stuffing that my mom made
Mm.
all the time. It's again very simple with cornbread and kind of like your cream of chicken soup mixture and stuffing. It's just a one dish meal, so it's pretty
Mhm.
simple with some green beans. And so we'll probably do both of those um, meals as we talk around the table.
And
It's just a sweet and special time.
do you have like a devotional that is kind of married to these recipes too, like, or that something that you're
No.
no? Okay,
So the devotionals go with the
with the
person.
person. Okay,
Yes. So if it's an aspect, kind of like what I was mentioning with Elizabeth Freeman and her history,
goes back to Genesis, right?
yeah, it goes back to Genesis 1, really. And we're going to learn about the Imago Dei and what does it really mean to have value and worth? Well, who gave it to us? God. And so we are going to dive into the Imago Dei, the image of God, and learn about why she could say, yes, I'm created equally, because she was and is by our creator God, and so are you, and so is everyone listening. And so that is what we're going to dive into. And so it's a lot of fun for our family. It's pretty organic. We just talk about history. My daughter, my son has two, but my daughter typically will cook with me, and it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's nice to bring your kids too, and it's so useful for them as they grow up and as they get older and they're on their own to know how to cook. You know?
Oh yes, yes, that too, that too. We're launching. Our son is about to be in college,
Yeah.
which is wild, and so learning how to cook and thinking through recipes. Of course, he's not going to in any way, shape, or form cook any of these recipes. I will be so amazed if he calls me and says, "Mom, I made homemade butter." I will be just so proud. But I do think just the general learning about how to navigate a kitchen is a lot of fun, but also just gathering together. It's so much about togetherness and being intentional and relational with your family as you learn. It kind of takes the um anxiety of trying to figure it all out and just makes it okay, this is a fun and doable thing we
Well,
can do together.
you know, and then another point on that, people talk about how it's very hard for families. You know, we're dealing with a lot of isolation in society and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Everybody's got to eat, right?
Yes.
And people talk about one of the ways that you can kind of chip away at that and put community back in is the simple act of eating a meal together, which, when I grew up, like we ate dinner together every night, as a family. But that's not the case because people have practices and things like that, the kids and stuff. But if you can cook together, like if you have the time and you can cook together and then enjoy the meal together, like that just allows so many opportunities to share, to break down those barriers that you might have with your, other members of your family, your kids, whatever, and you're doing something that you all have in common. Y'all got to eat.
We all got to eat. You heard it here first. It is so true. And I do hope that my resource Celebrating Around the Table helps people gather together. More when we return. Welcome back to Living by Faith with Trillia Newbell. It has been such a joy to talk about Black History Month, and welcome to February. It's a short and sweet month heading into spring, and it's a joy to talk about this. And we've been talking about recipes and gathering together, and I love the idea of providing a resource where families can then begin to think intentionally about how to gather around a table. Don't you, Karen?
Oh, I do too. I do too. I have two sons, but one of the things that we've done, like I said, I like to cook, and my sons have. Over the years, I tried to teach them different things, simple things, and I tried to make it fun so that they would like different kinds of foods and and eventually learn to cook. And you know what? They both do know how to cook. So one is more adept than the other, probably, but they both do. Anyway, we were talking about engaging with our families, maybe friends too. How do you engage with kids on these topics?
Yeah. Well, in the book, at the end of the devotional, I give a prompt called the Kids Corner. So if you can use this resource any way you want, but if you have a question if you have children, I intentionally provide a kids corner question or kids corner statement so that you can engage the heart and mind, because that seems to be one of the biggest things that a lot of people say is that I would love to do this, but I don't know where to begin with my kids. And so helping all of my tools, everything I do really is about discipleship. And so I want to do anything I can to help you help your kids. So that is one aspect. But really, we just need to think about where they are and engage, talk to them, talk openly, talk. So for example, even with the Elizabeth Freeman, as I've been talking about so much, we could, when we're talking about and thinking about the Imago Dei, we can just say to our kids, hey, what do you think about that? How do you believe that you are made in the image of God? So I'm just going to actually read the Kids Corner question and statement that I did. All right. So for Elizabeth Freeman's devotional, where I'm diving into diving into Genesis 1, I write, do you know that you are made in the image of God? That means you are made to reflect God. Because he is good, you can be good too. Who else is made in the image of God? So that is something, now, of course, in your not so professional voice, you would be talking to your kids. You just say, did you know you were made in the image of God? What do you think about that? That means you're made to reflect God because he is good, you can be good too.
Right. And you know what? Asking kids these questions rather than just like talking at them, but asking
Yes.
them to, you're inviting them to engage, you're inviting them to really kind of think about this. And that's how they learn.
Yes.
And they might have some ideas that maybe are not on the mark or whatever, but that gives you the opportunity to guide them, to explore, to point them in the right direction, to dig deeper. It opens up like limitless possibilities. It also opens up relationship.
Yes, I love that because the reality is that we don't want to just lecture them or we want to engage the heart, engage the mind, and asking questions is one of a sweet way to get them thinking. And I love kids. They say the funniest things. They do. And they also speak plainly. We are so adept to ah, nuancing, which, to love our neighbor, sometimes we have to, but also not saying what we need to say.
Yeah,
Well,
sometimes we overcomplicate things.
we overcomplicate everything. But kids are so simple and they're just going to ask the question. They're going to be intrigued. And it allows us to answer and enjoy and not be shocked or not make things feel weird. We can answer and engage and encourage the heart and the mind. And that's what I really want families to be able to do is to speak truth, to be open and honest, and to engage with one another. And I believe it spills over in so many areas of life. I want to just make a note that even though our phone lines are open, we are having some trouble with the headset. So thank you for calling in. You can email us at livingbyfaith@moody.edu, and I can answer your question via email. Again, livingbyfaith@moody.edu. But it is, I do love that we get to engage with children, and and I think it's important that we start early rather than wait until they've either heard from the culture or heard from their teacher or they're older. We can start really, really young with the scriptures.
Can I say, I also love the fact that you said that children speak very plainly. You think about Jesus saying, let the little children come to me. Because we sometimes overcomplicate things, sometimes, we get lost in the weeds and little kids can come right to the heart of the issue. And so we can learn a lot by engaging, just asking them what they think. And also, I think by doing that, we're making these eating around dinner time more fun, more memorable, more something that they want to go to. Because kids really, what they want is they want their parents. They want the attention. They want to know what their parents think. And they want to be able to tell their parents what they think. And so by opening this up, and if you are somebody who's just like, well, I don't know how to, make this big issue, break it down, and you have a little help, that can be very useful.
Yes. And one of the things that you said that I just want to highlight because I think it's so true is that we get to learn too. And I am a children's book author. I write children's books. And one of the things that has been so beautiful about writing kids' books is that I have to take a big concept and figure out how can I take this big concept and put it in words that a child can understand. And all it does for me is make sure I know what I understand, know what I believe, know what the Word of God says. And when we take big concepts or big ideas or truth, and we can pare it down that way, it helps us to learn. And so I do think that it is just such a gift. And it is just it's a gift that we are able to take ideas, take concepts, and really help kids engage. It's so sad today that the phone lines are blowing up, but we cannot get to you because of our headset set. If you have a question, go to livingbyfaith@moody.edu. I'll answer your question. I'll email you, and you will engage there. And I am so happy to follow up, livingbyfaith@moody.edu. But I also hope you can grab Celebrating Around the Table and use it as a resource to gather around the table, engage with one another, and learn about the history of our country, and specifically Black Christians, as you learn and talk around the table in February. But of course, you can use it anytime. And it has been just a joy and a delight to think through these topics and how to engage children. Start early. They are listening, and they can't wait to learn from you. I'd like to thank my producer, Karen Hendren, for joining me today. Also, thanks to the behind-the-scenes team at Moody Radio, my engineer, Merle St. James, and Titus on the phones. To grow daily in your faith, you can tune into my 52 Weeks in the Word podcast. You can find it at moodyradio.org. To hear today's program again, you'll find it at livingbyfaithradio.org or on the Moody Radio app. You may also connect with us through Facebook and Instagram at Living by Faith. Living by Faith is a production of Moody Radio, a ministry of Moody Bible Institute.